the towns and homes and halls. Gaze upon the beauty of the women, great and small, and then tell me who is loveliest and fairest of them all. Then the magic mirror would search the kingdom far and wide, judging all the beauty from the towns and countryside. And every morning it would give the queen the same reply:
You, my queen, are loveliest, it cannot be denied.
The queen, she had one child, a stepdaughter named Snow White. She regarded the poor girl with great hatefulness and spite. Snow White never once complained about her sorry plight. She went through life kind-heartedly, her smile was always bright. As she grew, Snow White became a beauty, tall and fair, with eyes of blue and gentle voice and long black flowing hair, until throughout the kingdom everybody did declare that Snow White was the fairest and none other could compare. Then one day before her mirror the queen again did stand. Tell me who the fairest is, she said with gruff demand.
Oh, my queen, you are fair, but there is one more grand, for young Snow White has now become the fairest in the land.
It's not true, it can't be! He cried out in shock. That little brat has nowhere near the beauty that I've got. She snarled with resentment and her glaring eyes burned hot, and in her jealous, wicked heart she hatched a cruel plot. Guards, guards! She shouted out in an angry tone. 2 guards who came a-running and knelt there before the throne. Take Snow White from my castle, she no longer has a home. You're to lead her to the forest and leave her there alone. The guards obeyed, though it was with very heavy hearts, for without Snow White's bright smile the castle would feel dark. They found her in the garden, feed me cardinals and larks, and though she pleaded with them to the forest they embarked. To the edges of the kingdom poor Snow White was led, to the thick and teeming forest where the guards both turned and said,
We're sorry, but you must stay here.
and bowed their shameful heads as Snow White watched them walk away. Her heart did fill with dread. Snow White, abandoned in the woods, all alone and scared, began to walk a little path that led she knew not where. And in a while at last she saw a little cottage fair. She knocked upon the tiny door, but nobody was there. The ceiling was so awfully low she nearly bumped her head, and 'twas with amusement she saw 7 tiny beds and a tiny little table upon where which was spread 7 tiny bricks of cheese and tiny loaves of bread. Hungry from her journey, Snow White ate a little snack, then yawning laid upon a bed and took a little nap. She slept for but an hour when the 7 little chaps who owned the little cottage all suddenly came back. The 7 tiny dwarfs all gathered round Snow White. She explained her banishment, her tears fell soft and light. The dwarfs took pity on her as they listened to her plight, and told her she was welcome to stay long as she liked. And so it was that Snow White stayed with the 7 dwarfs. She spent her day quite busily doing all the chores. She cooked and cleaned and made the beds and mopped the little floor. Quite happily she did all this to pay her room and board. Then one day again the queen stood before her mirror and asked who was the fairest of all women far and near.
Oh, my queen, you are fair, but Snow White's far more dear.
At this the queen in fury snarled her mouth an angry sneer. The jealous queen knew at once what she had to do. She called for one red apple and a vat of poison too, and dipped the juicy fruit into the deadly noxious brew. Then dressed as an old woman left to give Snow White her due. So disguised into the cottage, the queen there found Snow White, and offered her the apple so delicious, red and ripe. Snow White, all unsuspecting, took a single faithful bite, and fell into a trance much to the wicked queen's delight. The 7 dwarfs returned to find poor Snow White in this state. They struggled to revive her, but she simply would not wake. Tears rolled down their cheeks and how their tiny hearts did ache. They placed Snow White upon a bed and prayed the trance would break. Next day before her mirror, the queen again appeared.
Now who is the fairest of them all?
She asked it with a sneer.
You, my queen, are fairest, without equal, without peer, now that Snow White has met a fate so dreadful and severe.
A year did pass and in the woods Snow White never stirred. She never opened up her eyes or spoke a single word. Her faithful friends, the 7 dwarfs, kept vigil over her, hoping that from this cruel state she one day would be cured. Then one day a handsome prince happened by the place where, surrounded by the dwarfs, Snow White lay in grace. The prince then knelt before her and looked upon her face, and seeing Snow White's beauty, his brave heart began to race. The 7 dwarfs then told the prince that they knew not how to wake her from this trance that was upon her like a shroud. Beside Snow White, without a pause, the gallant prince did bow, and placed a gentle, tender kiss upon her lifeless brow. And suddenly there came a change upon the still Snow White, as she bathed within the warm, enchanting, glowing light. She stirred and opened up her eyes and slowly sat upright. Her eyes then looked upon the prince and sparkled with delight. Back within the castle where the wicked queen did dwell, she once more asked her magic mirror, the fairest to her tell. The mirror replied,
Is Snow White released now from your spell?